Hi, my name is Graeme Ross. I'm one of the regional ministers for the Eastern Baptist Association. I wanted to take these few moments to talk to you about Facebook and the effectiveness that it offers to us as churches and individuals as we want to share our faith with the people around us. This webinar is about Facebook and not social media in general, because Facebook is the most popular social media platform by a long way. And the latest statistics, in fact, show that Facebook has 2.94 billion active users so far in 2022. That means around 3 out of every 4 of the 396 billion social media users are active on Facebook. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to do is say to churches who are looking at this thinking we don't know where to start with Facebook, because most people use it, and that'll be the easiest way to connect with most people and to use some of these principles that I'm talking about now. So we want to reflect on that, and then obviously if you're on other platforms you can apply these principles to those too, and there are various other platforms and we can talk about that another time. Or in fact, if you look at the Southwest Baptist Association, they've produced some helpful content on different social media, and in fact I'd encourage you to look at that rather than waiting for us to get round to talking about it. Social media is using technology to communicate, to collaborate, to network, to learn together. What social media is not is communicating at people. It's communicating with people. So it's communicating in such a way that it allows users to interact. And I think as churches we have a lot to learn from this, because our default mode is communicating at people. We tell people what to do. The way we run our service is very strongly led often, where someone at the front talks at people. And of course people pray from the congregation, but predominantly our communication about what our faith is at. And even our publicity, many of us are still living in the realms of a poster. We'll put our poster up which tells you. And in fact, one of the things we ought to do in terms of communicating about the important things we're doing is equip church members to have conversations and to explain those things. It's much more likely someone will come to something through someone saying, hey, guess what's happening? And this might be, you'd be really interested in this because of X, Y, Z, rather than seeing it on a poster. But there's a conversation for another time. Facebook is designed for relational networking, and people do that a lot. And in fact, we see this a lot on our community groups at the moment, where people say, can anyone recommend a plumber, or can anyone help me with X, Y, Z? And it's interesting the way that people are shifting more and more from objective reality. You could go on Trustpilot or Google reviews and get a review for someone, and people are increasingly instinctive, because of the world we're living in, putting questions on Facebook and trusting in people in their community to say, oh, this person's really good. Even though there's no real way of validating that. Someone could be recommending their brother or their next door neighbour. They may not know either. But it's interesting the way that social media is transforming the way that we operate as a society. And I think this is the opportunity for us as churches, for us to engage in conversations with people. The power of social media was evident to me in my last church move. The one before that, back in 2004, yes, I know I don't look that old. Back in 2004, I moved to a church in a village community. I wasn't on social media, and what happened was it took me a year or two to establish myself in the community, know the key players, know what was going on and all that sort of thing. Around about 2010, I moved to another church. I was on Facebook, and I reckon within 2 to 3 months maximum, I was involved in that community. I knew people. I knew who the key players were. I was engaged with people through social media, people who you would never meet, who you engage and interact with in local community forums and so forth. So the power of social media is there for us to connect with other people. I want us to reflect on the way we can use Facebook. Before then, I just want to pause and think about how we set ourselves up on there. So there's 3 main ways that a church or an individual might find or represent themselves on Facebook. The first is a page, second is a group, and the third is your own personal profile. So thinking about the page first, what is the page? The page is a place where an organisation, so taking the EBA Facebook page for example, an organisation will represent itself. This is who we are. We, the EBA, are in control of what is posted on that page. and we do that. Users can interact with it, but we are in control of what goes on there. Secondly, there's a group. On the page, we post on there. Visitors can post on there, but the way Facebook works is it virtually hides those posts. And so we had a problem in that before my time, the EBA set everything up on a page and that was fine. But then we found people would post to it. There'd be the implication that we were hiding some of those posts, and which we weren't. It was just Facebook being Facebook. And so we set up a group, and in the group anyone can post. We can post in the group as the EBA. I can post in the group as Graeme Ross. Any member of the group can post within the group. The difference between a page and a group is that one is very heavily controlled and it's what the organisation is communicating. A group is what the group members are communicating to one another. And so we set safeguards in place on the EBA page. We have post review. So if someone wants to post something, an admin has to say, yes, that's fine on it. And that just enables us to make sure we keep the group within its tracks and within what it was aimed there to do. You can also set up a group to have membership approval. With the EBA, we don't do that. Anyone can join the group, but there may be a reason why you only want certain people in the group, or you want to keep it ring fenced for a reason. You can also have a private group or a public group. Again, if you wanted to set up a group for your church as a prayer, sharing prayer needs, you may want to do that privately rather than publicly. But for most churches, I would imagine your group would be public and a place where the public can interact with you and see what church is like and ask questions and so forth. You can also, people are afraid of Facebook groups and pages because what if people comment in inappropriate ways? And Facebook is very helpful in allowing you to deal with such people. And the simplest thing on a computer, there's a ... next to a name. I'm sure it's the same on a phone. And you click or tap on that. And that gives you a whole variety of options where you can delete comments. You can restrict when a user can post. You can even restrict how many times they're allowed to post a day. So you may have a user who's just like posting constantly inappropriate, and it's not negative or horrible, it's just inappropriate. And so you can put a restriction on people how many times they can post. So within the groups, there's all sorts of functionality. One of the things that's ideal, but is quite an awkward ask, is that Facebook will take, for someone who has a few hundred friends and they're interested in several groups, Facebook will construct them a news feed based on its algorithm. And as part of that, it won't show them everything that everyone has said or done unless they tell them they're particularly interested in. So for our group members who will say to you, oh, do you know, I didn't see that post you put up about, what you need to say to them is at the top of the page, there's a button that says edit follow settings. And if they click on that, there's an option for them to click favourite. And when they favourite a page, it means the newsfeed is much more likely. I don't think it always does even then, but it's much more likely to show them everything that is then put out on that page. So it's something that I like to have up my sleeve to tell people if they say, oh, I didn't see that post, and it's a way they can access that information. The third one is the personal profile. Now, it used to be conventional wisdom, and I think it is still a wise thing, that you keep your personal profile separate from the page. Now, I think the problem with that in this day and age, with so many people on Facebook, is it's just not how Facebook works. Facebook is amazing at connecting people. I was once connected with someone via Facebook that I knew years ago before Facebook was a thing, and then somehow it had matched us up. What is that all about? I have no idea how it knows those things. I have no idea how it works. It just does. And so as much as you might try to hide your personal profile, unless you call it something cryptic or something and don't ever comment on where you live or that you go to church, it will connect it eventually. And so I think there's actually great benefit in commenting on your church page in your own personal profile. Now, there is a but to this. The but is when some of those people say, can I be your friend? And you don't know who they are, you don't have to say yes. And so I get this quite a lot, where what I do on my personal page, which I have to keep restricted for various reasons, to do with my family, I post some things to friends and some things publicly. The things that are public are things like a comment, a spiritual comment, or a prayer, or a spiritual resource. So people who I won't friend because I don't know them can still follow me, and then it will notify them when I post something that is about church or church life or Christianity. And so it's the best of both worlds, really. It's an awkward one when someone who's on the fringes of the church wants to be your friend. And again, you need to evaluate for yourselves whether you friend someone or not under those circumstances, and that will depend on a whole host of things. So let me think a little bit about a cover photo and also a profile picture, which you would get on your personal profile or on your Facebook page. So a cover photo is the one across the top. Lots of churches will default to the church building. I have a bit of a problem with that personally. I'm not saying it's wrong, but what you're communicating in that moment is our church is the building. I'd much rather have a picture that had people on it. And as we're going to say along the way here, if you ever include pictures of people from your church, you must have their permission. It's no good thinking they won't mind, surely. You must have their permission, even if you know them really well. You really must do that properly. Cover photo, people is good, or something that says something important about who you are as a church. It might be that you say our church is primarily a loving church, so you might have something about love or the importance of love, or you might say our church believes in the word, we preach the word, and so you might have something about the Bible, and relying on the Bible is our guidebook for life, or whatever language you'd like to use. The Bible is our authority in life, or the Bible is what I depend on to show me how to live, whatever it is. In the olden days, you'd have said the Bible's our Haynes manual, but I'm not sure people quite get that reference anymore. So you can put a cover photo up and you can leave it there forever. Alternatively, you can rotate them. So the EBA standard cover photo is a collage of images. We rotate that out at the moment. It speaks about our week of prayer that's happening next week. It could also be rotated out for Christmas or harvest or any of those such things. Or if there's something important thematically you're trying to say. It could be that it asks a spiritual message. You could have a question of the month on your cover page. Where do you look for hope? Where do you find peace? And so forth. And I think the key to, as we're going to say several times today, to what we communicate on Facebook is primarily what will resonate with people. Now, nothing resonates with everybody, I get that. But if we're posting and what we're posting is not resonating with people, people will tune out of our social media channels, and the Facebook algorithm will stop showing them things they're not interested in. And that's a problem for us if that's our page. In terms of our profile pictures, those are often very small, so it's better not to try and be too clever of them. If I'm doing a profile picture of me, it's generally going to look like that. Sorry about that, didn't mean to frighten you. If I'm doing a profile picture for my organisation, it's probably going to be a logo or something that just in a nutshell makes it clear to someone that this is who we are, so they can glance at it and know who we are. Tagging churches as we do as the EBA is really problematic. If a church has a generic name, let's go for Hope Church. We don't have a Hope Church, but let's say we did. Trying to tag Hope Church is difficult. So if you have a generic name rather than a town name or something, it's better to put Hope Church Ipswich, or there is a Hope Church Ipswich anyway, God bless them, or Hope Church Felixstowe or whatever it is. So if you have a generic name, always put an identifier so you are clear that your Facebook page relates to you and not someone else, because it's problematic if the other church behaves in a way or puts out messages in such a way that you wouldn't want to put out. And that's not about being right or wrong. It's just about recognizing that what I might put out on a Facebook page as a priority may be different to you, but we would arrive at it as we get through the same principles, hopefully, but we might go about it different ways. I want to think through a few areas now about the way we use Facebook. The first is how we connect with people through communication. So I think when we have a page or a group, we need to build that page through interaction. Often we behave like we build that page through information, And it will partly be information based, but it's actually to do with interaction. It's to do with asking questions. It's to do with providing resources and information that people are interested in, and then say, and what do you think? And tell me about it, and trying to engage some sort of interaction. People get obsessed with likes on Facebook or the little heart things. It's the sad face always worries me, because I think, is the sad face someone saying what I've written is sad, or are they saying it's sad that that has happened? And that's always a bit of a mystery to me. So people obsess about that, but the real thing we're hoping for on Facebook is a share. So someone's going to click share and they're going to share what we've put out, and that way we expand our reach and more people get the information, and they also then have the opportunity to say, oh, that page looks interesting. So if your page is constantly putting out resources for life, quotes for life, things that are useful to people seeking peace or people who are stressed and looking for answers, if you're putting out things that are going to be helpful to that, people will share it. And then people are more likely to say, oh, that's a church I want to be a part of, because you're saying something useful, you're engaging in a meaningful way. I think in our Facebook groups, it's ideal if we can share the life of the church, and I'll say more about that in a minute. We focus too much on information and events, and really Facebook gives us the perfect opportunity to say, this is us, this is who we are, this is what's important to us. Putting up pictures of people, again with their permission, or video of events, and we must be very careful. I know all sorts of famous Christians take videos of people they're talking to and pictures of their congregation they're looking at. They shouldn't do that, because we need permission from those people under GDPR to put their pictures on Facebook. So we must be careful about that. We need to think about what resonates, and I'm saying that again. What is going to resonate with people? How am I going to connect with people in their lives? So I can say to Great Britain through Facebook, come to my church on Sunday. Are most people going to come to my church on Sunday as a result? I wouldn't think so. Most of Great Britain doesn't go to church. It's not likely to resonate. But I can say to Great Britain through Facebook, on Sunday, the Queen has died. It's very sad. We're going to be having prayers. And lots of churches are actually doing this, aren't they? Prayers for the Queen and the royal family on Sunday. Prayer for the new King. Giving you the opportunity to come and do that. And as part of our service, we'll be reflecting on what it means to mourn and how we mourn. And God comforts us as we mourn. And as the verse, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. So you're saying to people, this is what we're doing, and you might find it useful. You're not saying you might find this useful. That's a bit pointless, because if it resonates, then they'll come because it's useful. So this is particularly important at the time, because as well, some people are mourning the Queen. I get that some people are like, I don't get it. What's it all about? Why wasn't the football on last weekend? And there are different opinions about it. But the other group of people are people who've been bereaved, and this has triggered something, and they are mourning afresh in a deeper way. People who are all emotional and don't understand them, and the reason for that partly may be that they are suffering. Suffering is the wrong word, although they are suffering. They're feeling this emotion from within, and it's to do with past bereavements being triggered, past pain being triggered. So in flagging on Facebook as simply and as natural as possible, that's what we're talking about. Someone might think, oh, I really want to hear that, or I'm going to watch that video after. I don't have the courage to go, but I'm interested in watching about that. So we connect with people through our communication. Sharing good news stories is a wonderful thing if it's possible. It's difficult because they're obvious or they're often private stories. But if we can get someone to share their own story in a video or by writing something, or that's really ideal. But clearly we shouldn't do it without people's permission. We shouldn't share stories, even if we anonymise them without someone's permission. And so we have to be a bit careful about that. On social media, you're much better off putting short clips out than full things. You can put a thing out that says, here is a link to our service, and people may watch that, but most won't because it's too long. But the better thing to do, and some churches do this, is they'll put out short clips, and it'll be a little clip from a sermon or a testimony someone gave in the church. This is a little snippet. Oh, and by the way, if you did want to watch the full service, here is the link. There's no harm including it, but you're making the focus, watch this 30 seconds about the love of God. So that's a good thing. If you're going to post a video on Facebook, it's much better to upload it to Facebook than share a YouTube link. And that's simply because the Facebook algorithm will prioritize a Facebook video generally over a YouTube video. Thinking about how we communicate in modern culture, I think is important. As the EBA, one of the things we did over the summer was we put out a email each week as an experiment. It was called a 60-second email, and we put it out in the style of social media, where there was an image and a sentence or two and somewhere to click for more information. And the feedback we had on that overwhelmingly was people saying this is really, really helpful. But at least 90% of the communication of the feedback we had was positive, saying we really like how simple this is to access. We can do something with this. We can scan it quickly and see if it suits us. And that's what we do with social media, don't we? We scroll through stuff and we take what's useful. And I think the more dominant social media becomes, and it's pretty dominant already, the less tolerance people are going to have for reading things that are very wordy. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know, and I'm not going to comment on, but that's the world we live in. If we're going to communicate well on social media, we need to use visuals. If you're not arty, you don't have the resources, they don't have to be really clever, snazzy visuals. You could be putting on a fun event and you might be trying to do a really clever poster. And if you can't do it, you need to go on a site like Pixabay or Unsplash and download a picture of someone smiling and looking happy. And then you simply say, apologise for that noise, it's my dog flapping her ears. And then you simply say, you put the smiley picture up and then you say, this is how we're feeling about the event coming up next week. So there are ways of using the art that other people have produced and we can use that together. So using visuals is really good. And when we're going to use videos, use short stuff because that's what we find on social media. The second area I want to look at is how we engage with people. So engaging our communities has never been easier, because most of us live in communities, if not all of us, that has a Facebook page, village Facebook page, town Facebook page, area Facebook page. If there's not a Facebook page for your area, then start one. That's not a problem. And in these groups, we can ask a whole load of questions about the community. We can offer to help. In my community, a youth club is starting because of our village Facebook page. There was a conversation about the needs of the village. There was concerns about young people. And someone then said, well, I'd love to start, in a separate post, I'd love to start a youth club, but don't know how. And people were saying, well, I'd help you, or I have experience, or you need to speak to this people. And it was just amazing, this networking power together that has made this youth group a reality. It's going to be in the church building where I'm a church member. And it's so exciting for me as a member to look at our church where we don't have the skill set or the volunteers to put on a youth club ourselves. But we've been able to give our building and give what we have, and people from the community are coming in so that this can become a reality. And I think it's a great way of engaging with our community in these groups, asking questions and saying, what is the need of our community? Or we're going to be praying for the community on Sunday. What would you like us to pray about? Or even, and it depends on the group admins whether they'd allow this or not, even it's our prayer meeting on Tuesday. And if you have a personal prayer request, can you message me? And you can include that. What a great way to engage people spiritually. I think we need to ask questions rather than giving answers. We're very tempted as churches to put out on Facebook, the answer is Jesus, or this is the answer. And we may do that sometimes, but actually thematically, if we're talking about a theme, it's much better to ask a question and let users interact with what we're saying. So a question might be, what gives you peace in life? A question might be something like, what is our purpose? There's all sorts of big questions in life we could be asking. And again, I think we should make some of those about God. I think too much of our social media is about us as churches, and actually it's Jesus is the one we should be pointing to. We can mix in those questions with the life of our church, so we can take the online questions and feed them into an on-site service, and vice versa. We can take the things we've done on site and we can reflect them back online, and we can show snippets from our sermons and different things. I don't think it's especially helpful posting services on social media. I know churches do. I think our members will watch it. Will it resonate with the wider community? I think probably not. People aren't looking for that. But I think if we post snippets on there, the bits that may resonate, that will generate interest. I think we've got to reflect more on, would I watch this if I wasn't a church member? And actually thinking about some of those things. Thinking about how we do things authentically, recognising people aren't looking for shallow glossiness on social media, they're looking for reality. They're not looking, when they ask for advice about a plumber, they're not looking for the person with the best graphics or the most amazing Facebook profile picture. They're looking for someone who's a good plumber who will be recommended. And so it amazes me, and it also frustrates me sometimes when I've produced something really clever on Facebook that's great visually, and which doesn't get much interaction, and then you see someone do something similar just saying, I've been wondering this, and it gets loads of interaction. And Facebook's a bit of a mystery like that sometimes. I think we need to do things authentically rather than, sometimes I wonder if we over produce things on Facebook. It looks a bit suspicious or not quite right. We need to learn to tag people where it's appropriate to do so. So whenever we're commenting on Facebook as the EBA and we're mentioning a church or an organisation, we always tag them. We have a policy, we don't tag individual people on our Facebook page, and that's because we don't have their permission to. We can go and get their permission, but often that holds up the posting process too much and means we're a bit behind, so we don't do that. Now your church will have their own policy, and I'll say more about policies later. But it's important to recognise the power of tagging, because when I tag a church on our page, it tells them we've written about them, and it also alerts potentially the followers on their page that this is what has gone on. If you want to tag someone, there's a tag icon when you're posting, but if you can't spot it or that's not easy for you, if you just use the @ symbol, an @ symbol as you'd have in an email, and type @ and then begin to type the first few letters of the person or the organisation's name, and the tags will then appear next to you as you're typing. And this is a really valuable thing as churches. So if you're a church in a town, you could have a weekly shout out, and you could have, this week we're shouting out the food bank, we think you're great, or street pastors or schools organisation, or all the teachers out there, or local school or local councillor, whatever it is. And this is our weekly shout out. And it's also a way that you could then begin to mix the kind of online, on-site, in-person thing all together, because you could pray, you could post on social media, and you could also pop down to the local food bank or whoever it was, or street pastors, and take them a box of chocolates or something, and just say, we think you're great, and these are for you, and we as the church, we're behind you, we're with you in all we're doing, we're praying for you. So it's just a way of engaging. And as I said at the beginning, when I moved to a church, once I was on Facebook, that engagement across the community became really, really easy. And one of the things we did in that church, we had 2 Facebook groups, and one was for the church, but anyone could join, but it was more about churchy things. And the other was to do with our family events that we ran. And because the membership in the family groups was much higher than the other one for obvious reasons. And one of the things we were then able to do was occasionally post things in there that were spiritual, such as it's harvest, or are you coming to the carol service? Now, if you post continually spiritual, come to my church in a group that's for family events, people will become annoyed with you very quickly, and it will have the opposite effect. It will harden people against going. But it became very appropriate to engage with families through that group. And so reflecting on the sorts of groups we need and what will be most effective, I think is an important thing. As people explore faith through social media, I think one of our challenges is then, if they come to faith or we're at the point of saying, I'd like to know more, what do we do with them? Because they're not necessarily going to be motivated to come and sit in a service on a Sunday morning. People who are engaging via social media, which is very interactive, are generally going to be frustrated, sat in a building, listening to someone, however wise they are, and I'm sure you are very wise, but it's not likely to work for them. So working out how we engage with people spiritually beyond a Sunday service, I think is very strategic in this culture we live in, and we've seen that through Alpha or Christianity Explored over the past few years. But I think increasingly we're going to have to think of ongoing discipleship using some of those sorts of models. And the last thing I want to say about connecting with people and engaging with people is it's about far more than how many likes you get on a post. Some people obsess about, oh, we got 3 likes or 10 likes, or I got 100 likes. Look, that's amazing. And it is nice when someone clicks like. And actually, it's really nice to encourage our church members to remember to like our Facebook posts, as long as they like them, obviously. Because it will give them more prominence. The more someone interacts with a post, the more the algorithm will make people aware of it, because the algorithm's saying, well, this looks popular. And so the more our church members can jump on things and say, oh, that's great, or I'm going to share it, the further out it will go. So engaging with people is important, but people are more important than clicks. The next area I wanted to explore was about how we can share life. And it strikes me that most of what I see on many church Facebook pages is events. Come to our event, this is happening. And what we're not so good at is sharing life. One of the things we do is when someone's being ordained or inducted in the EBA, I post it on our social media and we celebrate that. One of the things I try to do is share the post from a church, and it's incredibly rare that a church will have posted on their social media that their minister is being ordained or inducted. When you think about it, that's quite sad, because it's a major event in the life of the church. A bit like if you were having a baptism one Sunday, you might post about that. How exciting. Very good. And incidentally, you wouldn't say we're having a baptism on Sunday. You'd take a picture of the baptistry being filled. And then you might take a picture of the heaters in there and so forth. So you'd reflect on a ways, rather than saying there is a baptismal service, you make a bit of a story out of it. How do I communicate the life of what's going on? Oh, thanks to Bob, who came and cleaned the baptistry tank out with a picture of the water filling. We really appreciate you, Bob. So we're sharing life of the church. We're sharing what's going on, showing pictures of people, again with their permission. But how do we share what is going on, that people are participating? It'd be great if our home groups posted on Facebook sometimes. For those who are happy to be in a photo, as long as they're smiling, there'd probably be biscuits involved, wouldn't they? But if they're not, just to post, they could take a picture of the plate of biscuits and say, on Thursday we met and we talked about this, and someone said, do you know, it was so helpful talking about this. And so you don't need to elaborate. You're just saying, in that what I would call incidental communication, people think it's about a home group meeting. It's not. It's about you saying the church meets regularly in small groups, and people find it useful because they get to talk and pray for each other. Now, you've not explained it in the way I've just explained, but if you construct your post in the right way, there's all sorts of incidental communication going on. I think one of the reasons we shouldn't be obsessed with likes is there are all sorts of people out there who are on Facebook but never like anything, because they're just on there, cynically you would say, to be nosy, but actually, in honesty, people sometimes don't interact because they don't want to draw attention to their profile, because they don't want friend requests from people they don't know. I think one of the things we need to do is to work out how we can share the life of the church with photos and so forth, but to do it in a way that's appropriate and with permissions, and is not invading privacy in a way that someone wouldn't want them to. I think the other thing we need to do is learn to put out resources that our members can click on and share. And so if I was to post and say, everyone needs Jesus, and that's true, and I believe that wholeheartedly, it's not likely to be something that people would share, but it might be. Some people would, but I think most people would be a bit not sure about that. If I was to put a post out that had someone looking stressed or upset on a picture, and then said something like, are you at the end of your tether? Don't know where to turn. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. No, that's wrong. Are you at the end of the tether? Don't know what to do. Jesus promises the peace that passes all understanding, And so this is awful, but bear with me. If you take the gist of what I just said, so you're trying to say sometimes we're stressed and God can give us peace. And if you can phrase that in a sentence or two that's snappier than I just did a minute ago, that is something that people will share potentially, because they're offering hope to people around them. I think the next area I want to explore is being intentional about the areas we want to communicate about. So what does your page say about who you are? And I think you need to reflect on who admins the page. The admin is the person who's in control of the page, and that admin, one of those admins, needs to be either the minister or one of the deacons or one of the leaders in the church, because at times someone will have to make a call about what is or isn't posted or what is or isn't deleted, and it's better if that person is someone with trustee level of responsibility. On the flip side, I think it's also especially helpful to have a young adult or even a teenager potentially who admins the page, because they will make suggestions about content and the way things are laid out. It's also helpful to have someone artistic. If you want to post as your page in a more creative, artistic way, to have someone with the admin rights, which means they can do that directly, is incredibly useful. You definitely want more than one admin. You want 2 as a minimum. I think 3 is right for most churches. In a larger church, you might want 6, 5 or 6, because you're then keeping an eye on much more going on. So thinking about your admin, thinking about your page layout, and on the Facebook page at the top, there are what's called tabs, and the tabs are home, about, photos, and then there are several others. But after the 4th one, Facebook hides them. And one of the things you can do is you can click on the button next to those things. It says edit tabs from memory, I seem to think it makes. And you can click on that and reorder the tabs. We did this in the EBA. I can't think what the 4th one was that we moved. We moved videos into our 4th slot that was video, because we produced a lot of video content, and so we wanted to make that more prominent in our list. So reflecting on those tabs there and thinking what are the ones that best represent the way we run our Facebook page, and make those the most prominent. The key, as I've said continually, I'm going to say it again, is when we're posting on our Facebook page is to say what will resonate with people. What will resonate? What is useful? It's no good expressing something in a churchy language. Come to our church service if you like. It's not likely to have a great impact, and lots of you will know this because you've been trying it for 1,000 years. It's not going to have an impact on social media. If someone says to a friend, come to my church service and it's useful because of X, Y, Z, then that may be different. But just a generic come if you like is not likely to be effective. So what do we do instead? How do we do something that resonates? And we've talked about that on the way through, about sharing examples, about when we're talking about something that's particularly useful. And I would say, and I realise this is a bit frustrating, often it's better to talk about what was useful afterwards. When you put a clip up of someone talking about how to find peace in a stressful life or whatever it is, you're demonstrating the effectiveness, and people can obviously go back and listen again or watch a video on your YouTube channel or whatever it is. Spiritual engagement, I think, is really important on Facebook. Often our Facebook pages are just about us, and there's an opportunity on our cover photos or in other ways to ask questions about life, ask people if they've had answers to prayer, share good news stories. You can create cover photos. I've got 1 or 2 that are available if you want to get in touch, and they ask questions like, are you looking for hope? And just 1 or 2 things that are pointing to God a bit more than the traditional Facebook page type of stuff from churches. Communication strategy is really important. What do I want people to know? What is important about my church? If you have a set of church values, your Facebook communication will clearly want to reflect them, and that's really good. So if you're a light-hearted church, that may not be your church values, but if it's true, you want your Facebook page to reflect that. If you're a church that is very serious and no lightheartedness here, then your Facebook group will have a more formal tone, but it should reflect who you are and trying to convey what you think is important about who you are. What is our strategy? Who are we trying to communicate? What sort of things are we trying to communicate? What do we want them to know? Is our communication primarily about God or us? We talked about that already, and I just think it is significant that we're using probably our most effective tool with communicating with the people around us in our communities, and we use it primarily to talk about ourselves and not God. And I think that's something to reflect on. I think there's an opportunity for us to join pages and groups where resources are generated that we can share. And as the EBA, we're trying to do this. We're trying to make resources available that people can click on and click and share. Or we're sending out resources to our churches increasingly, or trying to. We're moving in that direction where those churches can then post those images as if it came from them. And one of the things that we'll do as we continue to do that, in our hope is, we'll then take resources from some of you and collate them and curate them and make those available to churches. So it's not about me or us doing all the work. It's about us acting as a conduit to share some of this stuff, because I know lots of you out there are producing great content. We need to think about how we're responsive to tragedies and when things go wrong. And the simple advice I give you is, if you're responding to a tragedy in your community on Facebook and you're doing it really quickly when something has happened, is be really simple. Desperately sad to hear that. We're praying for everyone affected at this time. So something like that, but phrased in your own language, incredibly simple. If you try and get too clever or complicated and do it in a rush, it could really backfire if you come up with the wrong sort of words. So think about how you're responsive. If you're a Facebook admin and you're putting a message out in a rush on behalf of the church and you're not the minister or leader, it's just worth just zapping them a quick call and saying, just reading it out and saying, are you happy with this? What will resonate with people? We're going to watch a short video now. And I just want you to see what you think of this and think about, why do I in this video talk about certain things in the way that I do. Welcome to Untitled Chapter. I'm just going to show you inside quickly, so follow me. Nice to see you. Try and keep up. We've got our welcome sign there. It'd be nice to see you. Just come on in and I'll tell you a bit more about the church. Particularly wanted to show this to you. This is something we made in our service a few weeks ago, and we gave everyone one of these individual panels and they were able to decorate it. The lines were there already and they had to put contrasting colours either side of the line, and they did that not knowing it would fit together. And this to me is a really important symbol of what our church is and stands for, that together and individually we come together and we make a real difference. United as a whole. We bring our individual strengths and weaknesses, but together we form the whole of what God wants for us. So come and have a quick look inside, and then I'll leave you in peace. Come in here. So this is where we meet on a Sunday morning. You may notice there's no chairs, which may surprise you, but the reason for that is we use it for all sorts of things. And in just over an hour, we've got a group of school children coming in here, and the church is going to be packed with people from the local school and their parents, which is going to be brilliant. We have clubs in here through the week and loads of activities. And then on a Sunday, we'll be here worshipping and learning in creative ways about how our faith is important to us and why we follow Jesus. So you're welcome here anytime. Please visit our website for more information. Thank you. Well, I don't know what you thought of that. It's a video we made several years ago. I cringe a bit watching it now. We made that before churches were doing that sort of thing. And so I wouldn't make it exactly like that now. But will you notice what I did? As I invited people into the church, the first thing I pointed to was a bit of artwork. And it said something about who we are, and it also said something about the church. And a moment ago, we talked about incidental communication. And what I was saying to people in that moment was, we as a church do things interactively. We made this art in a service. This church is very much about the people. Look at us all together. It says something about who we are. So I was saying all those things just by pointing and explaining a bit of artwork. And then we went inside, and you'll notice what I also did was I didn't put all the chairs out and make it look like Sunday. Instead, I talked about how the hall is used in the week. And I did that because that is what will resonate with people. That makes sense to people. The people who will know are not going to wake up and think, I'm going to church this Sunday, will be interested in some of those things. And those will be stepping stones to faith potentially for them. So in putting a video out, I was thinking very carefully about what is it that I want to communicate. And I think when we put Facebook posts out, it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. What is it that will resonate with people? What is it that they are going to find helpful? What will they connect with? And how do we bring them to faith? My aim is to make disciples, not necessarily to get people to join my church. And hopefully you do both. But actually our priority is to make disciples. And so that is our priority. How do we bring people on a spiritual journey? The last thing I want to talk about then is being visual. And it really helps when we're posting on social media if we do something visually, we do something creative. And so using visuals is important. There's a great website called Canva. And if you're making a Facebook profile picture or cover photo or just a general Facebook post within Canva, and it's a free bit of software to use, it's on the internet. Just go to Google or another search engine and type in Canva and it will bring it up. It's entirely free to use. There is a paid for version, but there's a lot of functionality within the free version. The real drawback of the free one is there are some things you can't do. You can't use their library of images, which is a very comprehensive one. But it's worth having a go at the free version and deciding if it's for you or not. And incidentally, charities can also use it for free, and there is a way of registering for that. So you can also, if you like it, then explore that sort of thing. You can create images in there within Canva. If you type into the search box what you're trying to make your image of, so let's say you're trying to make an image of come to our harvest supper, type that into the box and you may find someone else has made, and you can just switch out the details. And while you're getting the hang of Canva, that's incredibly useful because someone has put the artistic effort in and then you're just tweaking and switching the details. If you're putting in a quote for the sermon, you can go on Canva and type into the box quote and then click Facebook post from the options of the templates. And then you can delete the quote from someone's quote template and put your own quote in. And again, someone who's thought hard about the background and the fonts and has laid it all out for you. As long as your quote's of a similar length, it will work. So thinking about visuals, and also, as I said earlier, use generic images if you're stuck. But adding an image where possible will be helpful. And that's a good thing to do. Using visuals, I think is very important. If you can't, don't worry about it. It's much better to post something without an image than not post at all. Remind people continually that your conversations on your Facebook page and group are public unless you've set it otherwise. To realise you can mix online and offline stuff. One of the churches that has been really good at this, a good example, is Rushmere Baptist Church, and at Christmas each year they have a toy Mary and Joseph that goes on a tour around their village, and each day there's a photograph of Mary and Joseph in a different place in the village. I know lots of churches do that sort of thing where they put them in church, they put them in a shop window or something, or there's a competition with have you seen our stars, or have you done this, or take a picture. I think in Ipswich they had, someone was telling me, it may have been somewhere else, they had angels, go and take your picture next to the angel, these sorts of things. And you're mixing reality, offline world reality with online world and getting people to comment and share and so forth. So lots of that stuff is really good, doing things visually. And instead, with visuals, instead of just advertising events, it's much better to show what an event is. So you might say, come to our table tennis club, that's the post, and people might look at that and say, okay, I'll go. The reality is the Facebook algorithm may look at it and say, well, that's not very interesting. I may not show it to many people. Whereas if you take some photos of your table tennis club, assuming the people that give you permission to do that, or you produce a spoof sports report, or you put a funny story. It was hilarious at Table Tennis Club tonight when this happened. So those sorts of posts, and people will look at it and think, gosh, that looks like fun. I wish I'd been there. And actually creating and generating that, I wish I hadn't missed that, I wish I'd been there, is a much better form of communication than you ought to come to this thing where people don't necessarily know what it's all about. Churches can learn how to be relational from Facebook. And actually it's interesting to reflect on. Churches are sometimes a bit snooty about social media and say, of course, it's not proper relationships, is it? We know that. And it's interesting because often church is work relationally is built upon a Sunday morning. Once a week we meet up, we have a service, and then we have coffee together for 20 minutes. And that's our deep relationships. And a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group, in contrast, is 24/7 potentially. And I find that really interesting. In one of the churches I led, we had a WhatsApp home group. They didn't call themselves that, but that's effectively what they were. When someone said, will you join our home group? They said, we can't because of our life circumstances, but we talk regularly on WhatsApp and pray for each other. Which group was more effective spiritually in terms of prayer and support? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because instinctively we think that online communication is not as effective, but I think that actually some online groups are more effective relationally than some of our churches. And I think there's a lot we can learn from this. I'm available for you, not at any time of any day, but I can communicate with you and interact with you. You don't have to make an appointment. This is on tap, as it were. I think we also need to give our members confidence to share their faith. And we do that, and that's really important. I think we can share things that they can share with others, and I think it's important that we download those resources and we can get them from places like the EBA page or from different sites across the internet where we can post things. And again, we're looking for people who are generating visuals with just simple statements about faith or reality or what's going on, and we do that. Finally then, I realise I said finally a minute ago, but I'm a preacher, so just bear with it. This is the finally. How do we make this work then? Well, just a few really quick things as we come into land. First of all, get young people involved in this to help you. They know and understand this world. If you're really stumped, if you love the idea of all this, but you just can't do it, you can hire people, social media creators, who will do some of this stuff for you. Or if you get in touch with us in the EBA, we may be able to help put you in touch with someone like that. Part of my role in the EBA is to help churches with their digital communications, and so I can come and talk with you and work with you on setting things up, but I wouldn't be able to help you on an ongoing basis. So do get in touch, and you can message me through the EBA Facebook group. Just message the EBA and that will come to me, or you can communicate an email with me through our church through the EBA website and do that. The other thing I'd say is it's better to be realistic about what you can post. It's better to post really well 2 or 3 times a week than to put out a whole load of mediocre content just to keep it daily. And the thing I've noticed is we post daily most days on the EBA site, not because we have to, it's just we have a lot to say. When we begin to post much more than that, we begin to lose posts sometimes. Where Facebook doesn't appear to share them in a way we would hope they would. And so some posts go almost unnoticed, which is very frustrating. And so don't put too much out. Put out something good some of the time rather than trying to post lots of things. Schedule a plan within Facebook. There's a way to schedule within your page when it will post, and do make use of that. But obviously do keep an eye on that and be aware of it. Someone needs to be switched on enough to know that if there is a tragedy in the community or something goes wrong, someone needs to get to that planner pretty quickly and make sure something's not about to post that is going to look insensitive. We need to be very careful with that, because often when we schedule stuff we then forget about it. So just to be aware, the scheduler in Facebook is excellent and very easy to use. Be realistic about what you can post, we just talked about, and do look for resources elsewhere on social media. And the last thing I want to say is as I alluded to earlier, you will need a Facebook policy, because there will be people who misbehave, who don't use it properly, and you need to be able to say to the church, we're launching a Facebook page. These are the rules of conduct. This is what we expect from you, the members. Because sadly, I've seen some terrible things on church Facebook page because people think they're having private conversations with someone else on the page and they don't realise it's public, and they might be scathing of the church or saying that was a terrible service or why there's no love in my church. I've seen on a Facebook page, and it's ever so sad, and I don't think those things should be written anyway. If you feel those things, you should be having a conversation with someone. So the document we recommend people read when they're producing their policy is one produced by the Baptist Union, and we'll put up the link for it on the screen. I'll also try and remember to put it in the comments on YouTube. You could also Google Baptist Union social media policy, might bring you to the right place, or you can get in touch with me. Read the document, read the documents and the pros and the cons and all the explanations, and come up with your own policy. And do get in touch with any questions. You've made it to the end. Well done. Good luck with Facebook and all that sort of thing. And do get in touch. I'm very happy to meet with you to answer any questions and to help you with setting anything up.